In this example, we're going to enter the Thompson view replat here. We're really doing a plat check, but not a plat check where we're entering the bearings and distances recorded and checking a closure. In this plat check, we actually want to reconstruct the position of the corners and the right-of-ways and the lots based on the dimensions that are here, regardless of how an individual lot might close. So we can put the whole thing together. We're basically going to reconstruct this plat inside of Traverse PC. Before I jump over to Traverse PC, we're going to refer to this table for a bunch of our curve information, and then we're going to start down here in the southeast corner and work our way around this boundary counterclockwise first. Then we're going to come in and put in some of the right-of-way information here in the south, and then we're going to extend the right-of-way up to the north line with this offset that's up here, and eventually put the lots in as well. So let's jump into Traverse PC, and we've created a blank survey file called Thompson View and opened up a drawing view. Let me just, that'll work like that. And let's go ahead and jump right in. So I'm going to start a new traverse and call it boundary. I can pick a format. It's already deed with curves, which is the one I want, and a setting to draw it, which is property lines. And again, these are probably the last ones I used, so it remembered which ones I wanted. Let's choose OK. I'm going to work with the traverse view down here in the bottom of the screen, and let's just start entering data. So I'm starting with point 1. I'll assume the coordinates are 0, 0. You can put any coordinates you want. Let's drop down to point 2, and if we refer back to our plat, we see that this is a due north line, so 100 would be the bearing. I'm going to put in the plat distance, which is 380.51. I'm just going to press enter a couple times to get through that curve data until we get to the northeast corner. Let's jump back to our plat here real quick again, and let's come up here and just kind of zoom in a little bit. We've got a short tangent in the upper right corner, 5.96 feet. So we're going to want to enter that into Traverse PC before we put that curve in there. If you notice when I come down to the bottom here, I've actually got a copy of this finished plat inside Traverse PC in case we want to refer to that. So that's why I see the two icons down here when I tell I want to bring up Traverse PC. So let's put in that short tangent first. We have a bearing of southeast. Because of the direction we're going, we're going to change that to a bearing of northwest. So we want a 4 for the quadrant, 83, 52.49, and our distance from the plat is 5.96. Okay, again, enter through the curve data. Now we come to the curve on the north line. So let's switch back over to that. And if I look at C4, it's over here in the table. I have a radius of 746.2 and an arc length of 131.8. Let's come back to Traverse PC. If a curve is to the right, we enter a positive radius. So let's arrow over to the radius and type in that radius of 746.2 and an arc length of 131.8. Now the orientation of the curve is assumed to be tangent, so we're not going to give it any chord bearing or bearing of the PC to the PR or anything like that. Just going to assume it's a tangent curve. Now, the way that we're constructing this particular check, when we come down and establish the southwest corner of this boundary, we want to do it via an intersection of the two bearings on the west line and the south line. So let's go ahead and bring up our intersection dialog box. I can do it right here from the Kogo view. Let's go to intersect, and let's bring it over here a little closer to the drawing, and I'll show you why in just a moment. Okay, we're going to be using the intersect dialog box quite a bit in this example because of the way that we're going to go about checking this plat. So I'm just going to leave it open here and show you how it works with this first intersection. I'm going to tell Traverse PC that I want point 1 on the left side to be the west boundary. So I'm going to click the chevron here and come over and click on point 4, and that inserts point 4. And now all I have to do is tell it which direction do I want to go, and from the plat I want to go due south. Now I'm going to tell it I want to use point 1, so I click the chevron, go over to the drawing, click point 1, and I'm going to put in my bearing that I want to go here, which is southwest from the plat. So I'm going to type in a 389.5639, enter. Traverse PC then allows me to say I want to save this intersection point as some point in the survey. And I'm going to say I want to save it as point 5, my next point. Okay, so I've saved that. Traverse PC says, yeah, I want to save it. So watch what happens now. I come down to my traverse, recall point 5. That's my intersection point. Let's get over there and recall the right number there. Traverse PC tells me that point exists, and I can bring it in. And then I'm going to recall point 1 and press the up arrow key, just so it doesn't create an additional point there. And I've now closed out my traverse. Now at this point, I would probably want to zoom in and check some of these numbers on the plat to make sure that they're what I'm expecting to have, and I can easily do that just by panning around, checking curve data, arc lengths, deltas, whatever information I want to check off of the plat. Let's zoom back out to the page. Now let's go back to our PDF here just for a moment, and I want to come down to the bottom here, and I think we'll save a little bit of time if we can go ahead and create a couple of points right now. I want to create the start of this right-of-way over here, 7.45 feet, and then I want to create the intersection over here. Okay, that's 19 feet off of that line. And so we're actually going to create a couple of different points here in the process of doing that. And I'll have some information in then right away. So let's go ahead and drop back to Traverse PC now. I'm going to come over to the drawing and just zoom in on the bottom part of this drawing so we can see this a little closer. I'm going to come back to my boundary traverse, and I'm going to use a couple of side shots off of 0.5, and I'll show you why. I'm going to insert and then insert again because I have 2 points here I want to create. The next point I'm going to create is 0.6, and it basically is on line from 0.5 to 0.1. So it's 7.45 feet over on the line from 5 to 1. So I'm going to say 5 dot dot 1. That's an equation that says recall that bearing from 5 to 1. I'm going to create some raw data out of that. And then I want that distance off the plat, which is 7.45. Okay, and I just created that point down there. I'm going to move some things out of the way here. So you see how I created 0.6, 7.45 feet over along the bearing that I wanted. Now, the next point I'm going to call 0.7, and this is a little bit different kind of point here. This one is an intersection of the center line right-of-way that will extend northerly from 0.6 and this southern line down here. So let's come up to our intersection dialog box. I'm just going to clear this. I don't think you would have to, but I want to here just so you can kind of see how we build it back up. So I'm going to use the left side to input my intersection, or my center line here. I'm going to pick 0.6, go ahead and select that. For my bearing, I'm going to look back to my plat, and I'm going to type in the bearing of that center line there. So it's southeast on the plat, so it would be going northwest in the direction that I want to go. Actually, for an intersection like this, it really doesn't matter. I'm still going to use the northwest, 00.4436. Go ahead and find that on your plat there. And then I'm going to come back and pick this same line again here. I can go from 1 to 5 or 5 to 1, it really doesn't matter. I also can pick the bearing of this line by picking the line near either end. It doesn't really matter which end again because the intersection doesn't really care. And now I've already got 0.7 in my traverse view below, but I want to reuse it here because I want these computed intersection coordinates to become the coordinates of 7. So as soon as I type in a 7, Traverse PC says, what do you want to do? And the default option is to update that existing 0.7. which is what I'm going to do here. We also need to specify an offset here. If I look back at the plat, I've got a 19-foot offset to the right. So let's go ahead and put that in there. Now let's type in our 0.7, and Traverse PC will update it based on the correct coordinates. We don't have to hit save at this point or plot because we saved it when we recalled the coordinates into 7, and we already have it included in a traverse, so it's being plotted. So now let's take and enter the center line of what's called Northwest 109th Terrace. Okay, let's come back to our plat here. Let's zoom back out and then come in a couple of times here. Okay, so we're going to start down here at the southern end of this center line of Northwest 109th Street. We're just going to bring the calls up, create the little stub out here, and then follow along this center line until we have that all entered. Let's drop back to Traverse PC again. Let's go over and create a new traverse for this. We don't really need our boundary traverse open right now. So we're just going to double click any blank line. We're going to call this the Northwest 109th Terrace. Okay. Now, again, I'm just going to use deed with curves, property lines. There's an alignment format here that includes stationing, but we're not really using stationing to enter this center line. We just want the curve information. So we'll choose OK. Here's our traverse. We're going to start by recalling 0.6, which is the point we created at the southerly end of that right-of-way. Traverse PC looks and says that we've already used 0.7, so the next available point is 0.8. And we're just going to look on our plat now and start entering that center line alignment. So the bearing is southeast, 44 minutes, 36 seconds. We're going to go northwest. That'd be a 400.4436. Oops. Let me get over to our bearing here. So 400.4436. Horizontal distance of 131.47. Okay. Let's go ahead and tell Traverse PC that we want to change the point type on this, and we want this to be a side shot. I can't use the F10 hotkey here because of the recording that I'm doing. It'll actually do something else with my recorder. So I'm going to select this from the menu. And because it's a side shot now, I can enter like a stub distance here. So I'm going to go back to my plat, and I see that I've got a bearing here of northwest 8959.59, so 489.5959, and a distance of 5.75. Now later on we can come back and make sure that that's exactly on the boundary line. For now I'm just going to put it in at the record bearing distance. If we don't like the kind of light blue color that it's drawn here, we can just double click that, go into the traverse settings for that point, and in the side shots we can change the color to something else. Okay, you might want to make all the side shots like a dark slate blue or something. Let's go ahead and do that so they show up a little bit better. Okay, now the next point that we create down in Traverse PC is also going to be a side shot because it copies that last point that way. And I think we can just do a Control F10 and it turns its side shot off. Again, that's a hotkey. So if I change the point type, I can see that right here I press Control F10 to turn it back to an occupied point. And now we continue easterly on our right-of-way here. Let's go back to our plat now, and we're going to go southeast 8959.59, so that would be a 289.5959. The first distance there is 20.79. Okay, let's enter through the next bits of curve there. Now, the next segment that we want to put in is actually a curve. It's called C1. Okay. Let's bring up our PDF again and just identify, here's the C1 curve right where the cursor is, and an arc length of 27.23. If we go to our table again, we can get the rest of the curve information for that. Let's jump back now to Traverse PC. And let's just enter that information. So we're going to arrow over to the radius, and if I go over to my table and look that up, the radius is 185. Now this is a curve to the left, so that's going to be a minus 185. And now I can enter my arc length right off the plat there, which is 27.23. Now I also get the delta, so I can go back to my table and look at the delta value here of 826. Okay, I'm getting just a little bit of difference between the arc length and the delta. So what I'm going to do instead of entering an arc length here is to enter the delta. Let's go ahead and type that in. So let's do 8.2557. And we see that we actually have an arc length still of 27.23, although it's probably rounding that a little bit. And if I look over here at my chord bearing and distance, they match up exactly what's in the table. Okay, so you have to make a decision of what I'm actually going to enter for information here, and it looks like I should be entering the deltas. Now we've got a reverse curve in here as we go on to C2. So let's look at C2 and enter the radius, which is 185. Now this time it's clockwise, so we're going to do a positive 185. Now let's just skip that arc length and go right to the delta. And the delta for this is 1651.54. So 1651.54. Again, as soon as I press enter, Traverse PC should have everything it needs to compute that curve, to draw it in the drawing view. I'm just going to check the other curve data for C2. I see my length is 54.45. My chord length is 54.26. Yeah, so that looks better. Now we've got another reverse curve for C3. So let's again go over to the radius. We see that the radius for C3 is again 185, so I'm going to do a minus 185. Let's go over to that delta again. Remember, we have that choice of whatever we want to do. And this one is exactly 826. So let's do 826 and enter. Now, I don't really need that last point, so I'm going to delete it. We don't really have any other checks for this center line at this point. So I'm going to put the cursor over point 13 in the drawing view. right click, go to Kogo, offset to alignment. And Traverse PC tells me that I want to take point 13 and offset it to the boundary line alignment. And it's done that for me. It's basically really close. It's up here 131 feet away from the point number 1. Neat thing is that I can click on this chevron here and come over and do the same thing for the side shot I entered earlier. Remember, that was 0.9, I think I remember right. And 0.9 also is pretty much right on the boundary line. So those are looking pretty good. That's about the only check I can really do at this point to see how close things are, other than to go back and look at the calls, the bearings and distances and curves that are part of that alignment. The other thing I might want to do, since this is an alignment, is come in and say, you know what, I'm going to change the way that looks so that it looks like an alignment to me. Instead of a solid line, let's go do something like a center line or a center, something like that. Just so that it shows up a little bit differently. Or you might go back in and say, let's do that, but let's choose just a little bit thinner line here, because that's what I want it to look like. This kind of helps us identify what we're working with on the map there. Okay, I'm going to leave this center line traverse open. I'm going to leave the intersection dialog box open. Let's go back to our PDF just for a moment here. And we want to now work with the right-of-way offsets for this center line. We've got a north line that defines some of the lots to the north. We've got a south line, or part of a south line, this right-of-way that defines the lot 5 here to the south. Let's go ahead and put some of these points in Traverse PC and show you how we do that. Let's come back to Traverse PC. Let's go ahead and pull this dimension out of here just a little bit, because it's kind of in our way. Because I want some point labels to work with here. It looks like back on our map that we actually want the offset south for points 11 and 12. And we want the offset up to the north here for really pretty much all the points on this center line. So 8 through 13. So let's come to our traverse view, and I'm going to select the center line that I want to create the right-of-way to the north for. So 8 through 13. Let's just go ahead and select that. I'll show you why here in a moment. I'm going to choose Kogo right-of-way offset. And I'm going to come in and make sure that I'm going to the left, distance of 16 or 17 feet. I can type in any point number and hit next, and I'll get the next available point label inside Traverse PC. And then this is what I wanted to show you here, is that I get to tell Traverse PC what I want to create offsets for. And I want to create offsets for these 6 selected points that I have up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just counting the points here. I've actually got a side shot in there for 9, which is why it says 6, but I'll only be creating them for the control point, so everything but the side shot. And that's exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to go to the left. I'm going to choose 2 options here. One actually creates the offsets and will insert them into the traverse I'm working with here. The second option here will create a new traverse. And I want that because that will establish the north property line there for me and allow me to import or insert some additional points. So let's compute that. Traverse PC inserts those and draws them in the drawing for me. Now, again, I'm not worried right now as to whether or not point 18 is exactly on this boundary line, or whether this point here off to the side of 8 is extending past the boundary line. I'm going to bring those on with some Kogo tools later on. I mostly want to look and see that, yeah, I created the points that I wanted. Now, I want to do the same thing to the south. So I'm going to come back to my traverse view, and I want to select points 11, which is already selected, and point 12. Okay, I held down the control key to do that. Now let's say I don't want to go to the left this time, but I do want to go to the right. I want to go 17 feet. Again, just type in any point label that already exists and hit next. So I know that point 19 is the next point. And this time I really don't care about creating a new traverse. I just want the offsets. So let's go ahead and compute that, and Traverse PC just adds those offsets. Now the great thing about using the right-of-way offset tool is that Traverse PC takes care of bisecting the angle for angle points, or for going back through the radius point on tangent curves. So 19 and 16 are both on the radial line of this curve, as are 20 and 17. They're on the radial line of that curve. If I switch up here to this curve between 10 and 11, 15 and 10 are on the radial line to the radius point. 11 and 16 are on the radial line to the radius point. So Traverse PC took care of that automatically with that right-of-way offset tool. And basically now I kind of have the right-of-way points that I want all set up here and kind of outlined and ready to go. I'm going to actually pick up one more point here that I think we're going to want to have. And that is, I think we're going to want to have the offset from point 13 here also. So let's drop down to point 13. And I think we're going to want the offset to the right as well for that one. So again, we can just type in any point label, hit next, and it's going to create point 21. And let's go ahead and compute that. Okay, because I think we're going to want to have that curve as well. And again, just like point 18, we're not too concerned whether or not it's exactly on the line at this point, because we're going to put some curve information in and then check that. Let's go ahead and close out the right-of-way offset. Let's go back to our PDF. And we can see that now to enter lot 5, we're actually going to start over here at point 1. We're going to recall the point, I think it was 7 that we created earlier here. And then we want to create this right-of-way that now is 19 feet offset from our center line, and this distance of 93.12 up from this point. So let's go ahead and do that now in site. Okay, so I'm going to create a new traverse called Lot 5. And we're going to use Deed with Curves on this one as well. I'm going to click on the ellipsis here for the property lines, only because I don't really want to label these curves right now because it's going to get kind of crowded here. Okay, we're going to start by recalling point 1. I type 1 and press enter. Traverse PC says that point already exists, so I basically press enter again. So recalling a point is as simple as point label, enter, enter, and I recall that point into the traverse I'm working with, in this case the traverse for lot 5. Now let's go ahead and create our point up here. Couple of ways to do this. I could just enter the calls here because it's the same bearing on the plat as the center line. So I can go 400.4436 for a distance of 93.12. Okay, and that's going to create that point up there. I can easily check that offset, again like I did earlier, right click, COGO, offset to alignment. But this time I want the alignment to be that northwest terrace. And fortunately it's picked that for me. Remember, any of the traverses that are in here now can be used as an offset or to offset to. And I can see that it's telling me that it's 19 feet to that point. So I have the offset that I want. The other way to do this is actually to do another intersection and use an offset from the center line of 109th to the right 19 feet and then come up that distance. I'm going to leave it right like this because we were able to check the offset. So it matches the calls on the plat, and it satisfies the condition of being 19 feet off the center line. So I'm feeling like I've got a pretty good point here. Now, because I'm in a traverse view, I can continue right on around the curve here, and if I look back on my plat, let's do that. I'm dealing with this curve. It says the length is 3281. So I can go back to my table on the plat and see that that's listed there under lot 5 at 3281. So the radius is 22 feet. Again, it's clockwise, so I'm just going to enter 22 like that. I'm going to skip the arc length and go right over to the delta again, because that's what we were doing earlier. My delta for that curve is 852624. Enter that delta in. Drop down to the next curve here, and I see that I now have a radius and a curve over to this next point. I'm just simply going to come over and recall that next point, 19. I'm going to go recall point 20. Just want to get these points in here. I'm going to recall point 21. And then I'm going to go back to point 1 so I can close out my my lot here. So I have my lot 5 in there. Now I'm going to run back up to this curve information, and I'm going to go to my next curve, which is between 23 and 19. Look on my table. and I'm looking for a curve with an arc length of 1103, and I see that the radius is 202. Now, in this direction is to the left, so I'm going to type in a minus 202. Okay, I'm just going to check. I see that my delta is 307.44, and I've got a 307.42, so I'm off just a little bit here. Let's continue on to the next curves before we decide what we want to do with that. Let's go to our next curve, which is between 19 and 20, and that has a arc length of 49.45. Let's find that in our table. And I see the radius is 168. Again, it's to the right, so I'll put it in as positive. And my delta now from the table is 1651.54. So that one matches up exactly right. Let's go down to the next curve, and I see that my arc length on that one is 29.73, so I find it in the table. And again, it's a radius of 202. I kind of use those same radiuses here. And my arc length is, my delta is 826. Okay, so that matches up just fine. So I'm really not going to go back and do anything about this. Okay, our delta was off by 2 seconds. I probably could have gone back and recomputed the position of 22 a little bit different using an intersection offset. Remember, I just entered the bearing and distance up there off the calls, and I probably would match up exactly with that arc length. Because this lot here is kind of self-contained and I'm not building anything else off of it, I'm going to leave it and let you change that position a little bit if you'd like to. Now, I can go into this traverse just by double-clicking anything that's drawn by it and tell Traverse PC that I actually want to draw those lot labels and the square feet. What do I have? The square feet? Yep. Let's put the square feet in there. And Traverse PC will put that information up. And now I have basically another check. Okay, I have 12,625 feet in Traverse PC and one more foot on the Plat at 626 square feet on the Plat. Okay, so I've actually pretty much got the whole south end of this done at this point. The next thing I want to do is take a look at this north right-of-way line of Northwest Malia Lane. And let's go back to our Plat and figure out what we want to do with that. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit right here. And I can see that my PCs and PTs are offset in these square symbols right here. And what I've got for lot corners are actually offset from those. So let's just go back to our table over here, the right-hand side of this Plat, and see if we can understand exactly what that is. So we're looking at these square symbols here. And if we run over to our table of contents up here to our legend, let's see, here we go. So the square symbols denote set 1 1/4 brass disc, inscribed PLS 56181, offset 2.75 feet southerly and radially onto the right-of-way. So those offsets that we have located there are not at 17 feet from the center line. Okay, they're 17 less this 2.75, but they are on the radial lines. So the points that we created from Traverse PC on the radial, on the offset, are actually on the southern line of lots 1 and 4. So we're actually good to go. We're not going to reconstruct these offset points like they're platted here. We're actually going to reconstruct the offsets of the PCs and PTs onto that north line, which is really what we want anyhow. So let's drop back over here to the left and scroll down just a little bit. Okay, so we actually have the right-of-way offsets radially on the line here, here, and here. And fortunately, we have the distances, this 6.41, which would get us from that offset to this next property corner. Okay, so we're going to use those distances here inside Traverse PC. Let's go ahead and zoom in the area that we're interested here. I'll zoom out just a little bit there. Okay, if I look at my Plat here, I'm going to come into the drawing view and put the cursor over this line from 15 to 16. Okay, as soon as I do, I get this tooltip that pops up. Now what I'm looking for is the arc length here. So identify out of the tooltip that the arc length is 2473. If I look back on my Plat and the north right-of-way line that we're talking about, I can find that arc length of 2473. And it's right where I want it to be. What I want to do then is that going to the east from that arc of 2473, I want to create 1, 2, 3 additional points. Okay, so let me use the cursor here. I want 3 additional points right about in here where the cursor is. And I'll show you how I would create those inside of Traverse PC. We're going to close out the Traverse we opened earlier. We're going to go back to our Traverse view. And remember, we told Traverse PC to create that right-of-way for us. And it did. It said left 17 feet, northwest 109th Terrace. And we're going to give it some information, deed with curve, just so it knows how to display itself. I'm going to do the property lines. I'll tell you what, let's do, yeah, that's okay. I just don't want to draw each of those curves in there, so I'm going to turn those off. I could probably create a format that was like property lines, but didn't have the curve labels on there, because it does put an awful lot of information up on the plat when I don't always want to have it. So here's my points, 14, 15, 16, 17, up through 18. The line that I'm interested in is this one from 16 to 17. I've got 3 additional points I want to create there. I'm just going to show you a real easy way to do that. I'm going to go to COGO and use multiple points. I'm just going to tell Traverse PC that I want 3 points on that line. And Traverse PC is going to create them 14.86 feet apart. Okay. I can give it a point label I want to start with. Again, I'm just going to type 1 in the next label. I'm going to compute those. Now, Traverse PC is going to go ahead and insert 3 points there. The nice thing about this is that it's inserted them all on the same arc. So if I come in and look at the radiuses here, and I don't need this multiple points anymore. If I come in and look at the radiuses here for those points, they're all at 202 feet. Okay, and here's that arc length of 1486 that it put between each of them. And I have 3 points in there just the way I want. Now I'm going to come back to my map, and I'm going to take a look at my first distance in here. To the first point is an arc length of 641, so I'm going to go to my table, find that curve, and I see that I've got a delta of 149.05. Let me show you how I would enter these. I think is going to be the easiest way. I'm going to select 24. I'm going to say COGO horizontal curve. Find out where that's at. Now, the blue boxes indicate information that's being held. Well, I want to release the location of the PT and the bearing from the PC to the PT, but I want to hold the bearing from the PC to the PR. In other words, I want to hold one side of the curve but not the other. I want to hold the PC side. That allows me then to come over and specify something else. In this case, I'm going to put in that delta of 149.05. As soon as I do, well, I got to release either the tangent or the chord length or something. I'm going to release the chord length. There we go. Now I can type in a delta of 149.05. As soon as I do, Traverse PC is free then to recompute the position of the PT holding that curve orientation, and I can just check real quickly that in the table the chord length or the length of the curve is 641, chord length 641, arc length 641. It's a pretty short curve, so they're the same. The rest of that looks good, so I'm just going to hit OK. And I just moved the position to 24, but again, it's on that arc. So I haven't taken it off the right-of-way line. I just put it the correct distance over. Let's do the same thing with 25. Let's highlight it, COGO, horizontal curve. And by now you kind of figured out I release these just by clicking them. I hold that, release the chord length. Let's go to our next delta. This delta is showing the arc length on the plat of 1004, so I find that in my table for lot 3 this time. So go to my table, lot 3, there's the 1004. Arc length is 250.54, so it's 250.54. Make sure I typed it in right. Okay, check my chord length, 1004, that looks good. So let's OK that curve. Again, it's just going to move it a little bit. Now let's go to 26. And we're finding this is pretty quick now. I'm just kind of memorizing what I'm going to click on and hold. Come in and type my delta. And this delta, off an arc length of 1001 in lot 2, is 250.21. So 250.21. 21. So I'm just reading those right off the table on the Plat. Okay, so now I've created all three of those points exactly where they are on the Plat pretty quickly. Now, did you notice that I didn't have to go in or didn't go in and recall a radius point for these curves? I already had the curve established, and I created points 24, 25, and 26 on the curve. So I'm basically using the existing curve to recreate whatever I need to reposition 24, 25, and 26. Internally, Traverse PC is creating a point of radius to do that. But for me, I can just work with the curve as is. Now, remember what we did earlier? We said, we went to the drawing view and we said, right-click this, Kogo, offset to alignment. So I probably could just leave this open if I had a big enough monitor. Okay, and again, I'm checking the alignment to the northwest 109th terrace. I checked point 26 and it's 17 feet, which is exactly what I want. Let's do the same thing by clicking on the chevron, then coming back and clicking point 25. It's also 17 feet. Let's do that again. Okay, so I just went back and re-clicked that chevron on my center line to make sure I had the right alignment. And now I should be able to click any one of these. Let's do 25 again now. Okay, so all these are coming up exactly 17 feet, as would any of these that I clicked on. Okay, so every one of these I can check and they're exactly 17 feet off. Just kind of gives me a little peace of mind about where I'm at with those points. Okay, let's zoom out here just a little bit. And if I go back to my Plat now, I really have all the points I'm interested, except I still haven't lined up or checked any of these points on the end. I really don't care about those again for now. We're going to do that here in just a couple minutes. Now, let's scroll on up here, and I need to put in this center line that goes from 25 up to the offset of this curve up here. So let's go ahead and do that next. Let's come back and look at our Plat now to get the information we need to create that offset up there. We're going to start at this point on the right-of-way, northern right-of-way here, and we're going to run up until we intersect this offset up here. And I'm looking at the Plat here and I see that's a 15-foot wide right-of-way dedication. So we're going to start at that point on the south end of this line. We're going to run this bearing until we intersect this offset from this curve. Sounds a little complicated, but let's go ahead and do that inside Traverse PC. Okay, now again we're going to use our intersection here, so I'm going to clear it. And I'm going to tell Traverse PC that I want to start by picking point 25. So I picked it and it brings it in. The bearing I want is off the Plat and it's due north, so 100. Okay, I'm not offsetting this line to the north running up between lots 2 and 3. So I'm really done. I've specified everything I need for that line. Now, the next thing I want is this line at the north here, and I'm just going to pick the line by first clicking on the double chevrons here, and I'm going to give it an offset of 15 feet to the left, which would be a minus 15. So I have really created everything I need now for Traverse PC to compute that point. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to type any existing point label again, and I'm going to use the next available point number. Okay. Now this time, I am going to save that point, and just for the heck of it, I'm going to plot it. Now, when I plotted it, Traverse PC just says stick it in a traverse called point plot, just so I have a chance to see where it put it and that it really is the point that I'm interested here in Traverse PC. So if I come back now and look at our Plat, I'm pretty quickly here getting enough points to put together the next lot, lot 2. Let me go back and zoom out here just a little bit. Okay, so I've got these 2 points on the right-of-way. I've got this point up here in the north end of that lot line. I just need to come over now and create a couple more points here, and I should be pretty much ready to roll. Let's see how we want to do that. Actually, what I think I'm going to do is let's create the other points on this 15-foot right-of-way dedication up here, as long as we're right here. I've already established on the right-hand side of the dialog box this curve between 3 or 4 and 4 and the 15-foot offset. So all I really need to do, let's go ahead and save that, is change what's over here on the left-hand side. So I'm going to pick point 4 and tell it I want to go this bearing, and again I'm just going to pick the bearing right off the boundary line here. Okay, and I can create that point. Now I could type in point 28 because it's the next point if I wanted to. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to plot it. So there's my point 28. Now let's come over here and pick the right side, or the east side over here. So I'm going to pick point 2. Let's pick our bearing. This is a good thing to point out. Actually, the intersection over here is outside of the endpoint of this line. So we're going to tell Traverse PC to accept points beyond that. We're probably going to need to take a look at it and view it and say that, where's that at? Okay, it looks like int 2 is way up here. Int 1 is really the one we want down here where the actual point is. We can move some things out of the way. But see, I was creating this one just 5 feet away. That's basically what we want. So let's come back and hit the view again. And we're going to save int 1, and we're going to use point 29. We'll just type it in this time. I'm going to save it. Yes, and we're going to plot it. So there's our 29. So we've actually got all 3 of those points now that we want up here. The only one we don't have is an additional point here on lot 2 that's just about 7.57 feet away from our 29. We'll create that when we get there. Okay, let's go ahead and close out that north traverse. We don't need that anymore. And let's actually start putting some traverses together. So I'm going to click over here in the traverse view. I'm going to insert above lot 5, lot number 1. I think that's the next one I want to do. I think it'll be easiest to do it that way. I'm going to choose Insert New Traverse above Selected Traverse. So we'll put it right above that. We're going to call it Lot 1. We'll leave it Deed with Curves. And I wonder if we have one for lot lines here. Alignment control loops. Let's do property lines. Let's actually create a new setting in here. So I'm going to tell it same as property lines but without curve labels, and I'm going to call that lot lines. And we're going to OK that. So now I have a new one in there called lot lines, and I can recall that anytime with just the format that I want. Okay, let's scroll down. I guess this is probably about right here. And we're going to enter lot 1 starting over here on the east side with point 18. And again, we haven't adjusted 18 or checked 18 yet to make sure it's exactly on the boundary line, but we don't have to, because anytime we do that, those changes will be reflected in this traverse and every other traverse that uses it. Now I'm going to recall 18 and 17 and see how it brings in the curve data as I go. So I'm creating this lot simply by recalling points. When I get to 26, I now need to jump up to the northwest corner of lot 1, find that on your plat, and I'm going to do that simply with a bearing and a distance call here. Again, the bearing of the lot line is the same as the on both sides there. It's just due north. Let's go due north. I'm going to go a distance right off the plat of 102.8. Okay. Now let's go over and create the point on the east line, and I am going to go back and use an intersection for this. So we're going to say from point 30, pick that point here. We're going to enter the bearing right off the plat, which is due east, so 190. And over here we're simply going to come over and pick our starting point up here of 2, and we're going to pick our bearing of our line. Okay, so now we're just back to a regular bearing intersect again. Now let's just type in any point number, use the next available point, which I think will be 30, 32 I guess it is. And let's go ahead and save that. Oh, here, I want to do 31, excuse me, because 31 already exists in that traverse. I simply want to update it, get the right stuff in there. Okay, let's come back to 31. Let's continue on down in our traverse back to point 18. Okay, what did we do wrong with our 31 here? Let's go ahead and find out. So something was wrong with this. Let's just find out what it is. Okay, do you see what I had done here? I had left an offset in of 15 feet. So let's change that so it's the one that we want. Now let's pick point 31, and we can update it with the correct coordinates. So I just had to get rid of that offset there. Had to make sure that I had all my numbers just the way I wanted them in here, and it meant in this case getting rid of that offset. So now I also have lot number 1 in and established, and I'm going to wait and change all the settings to draw them the way we want when we get to that point. Don't have to do that right now. Now that I've got lot 1 in, let's go ahead and tackle lot 2, which is just north of it there. Let's go traverses. Again, I'm going to select lot 5 and say insert new traverse above selected traverse. I'm going to call this lot 2. And remember that we created a new settings called lot lines, so it recalls that, remembers it, and we're really all set to go with this. Now I'm going to start on the north line of lot 1, and we're going to recall points 31, 30, 26. I'm just reading right off of my drawing view over there. 25. I'm going to go up to 27. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and recall 29 and back to 31. Okay, now the only thing I haven't accounted for is that I have one more right-of-way point up there on the Plat on the north end of this line. So let's go ahead and look at our Plat again and scroll up there. Do you see how I have this arc length of 60, 67 until I get over to this point? So we can create that on here just like we did earlier with that multiple points. There's some other ways to do it, but let's use that because we used that earlier. So first thing I'm going to do is between 27 and 29 I'm going to enter the curve data. So let's arrow over to that radius, find that on our table. So go to lot 2 and that arc length of 60, and then my radius is 761.20. Because I'm going clockwise on this one, it's a minus or a counterclockwise direction there. So I want a minus 761.2, and that'll put the curve in and establish the curve for me. Now all I have to do is go COGO multiple points, and I really just want 1 point, okay, and I want the distance to be 60, 67. I'm going to put that down here in the 60, 67 in the first distance. Okay, so 60.67. There's a couple of ways to do this, but I think this is a real easy way to do it inside Traverse PC. That's going to be my point 32, and we'll just compute that and insert it in there. Now, if I want to check that, a couple of ways I can do that. I can come down to my Traverse view here first of all, and say, okay, here's my arc length of 60, 67, okay, for that point 32. Let's check some other things here. I'm going to go back to the table and check my delta 434. So I've got the right delta 434. I could also come in and maybe check my horizontal distance 65. Yeah, it all looks good. So I basically got the point that I want, and I'm really done then with lot 2. The rest of these are all going to go pretty fast now, so let's close this out. Let's go to traverses. Let's insert above. There's going to be lot 4. That all looks good. I'm going to start lot 4 by recalling the points on the west end over here. Again, I don't have this point computed right where it's going to end up, but that's point 14 there. So I'm going to recall point 14 to begin with in this traverse. Then I'm going to go to 15 and 24. Then from 24, I want to go due north. Let's make sure that we're all on the same point here. So let me zoom in here just a little bit. Do you know about the zoom points? That it makes the points a fixed size, so even when I zoom in, they remain a fixed size here for me. Just makes it a little easier for me to tackle those. I do need a little curve information from 15 to 16, or from 15 to, I probably better go to 16 here, right? So let's go insert a point here, and let's go to 16. There we go. And now now once I put in the right points here, it's able to remember that, oh yeah, I do have a curve already from 15 to 16, and I have a curve from 16 to 24. So I just circumvented that by not recalling 16. Now I put 16 back in, and I'm good. Okay, at 24, I'm going to take off and follow the bearing and distance on the Plat here. So I'm going to go north. Oops. Arrow over one, north. And a distance of 104.12. 104.12. Yeah. And from that point, I'm going to drop down, and I'm going to go due west on an intersection. Let's come back up here now. Let's do a zoom page so I kind of see where I'm at. Two more points back on so I can see those. Now let's do the intersection. So I want to go from this time, this point, which is 33, my bearing on the Plat, which is due west, so 490. Then I want to come back in over here, this time pick point 4, and the bearing is going to be this line that I pick. Okay, so now I've got the points that I want. Let's type in so let's put in 34. Okay, so I've saved point 34, and all we have to do now is come back to our traverse and to close out on our initial point, which was 14. Okay, so we've got that lot taken care of, other than we need to bring point 14 back in where it belongs. Now let's do our last lot, 3. Again, tools, insert, above. The rest of that looks good. And really at this point now we're kind of just recalling points for this lot. Doesn't really matter where we start. I'm going to start here at 24. Go to 25, just working my way around. 27, 28, and I'm going to put a curve in there eventually. And let's come down to point, cursor over that one. I think it was 34, right? Yeah, point 34. Into 33, and then back down to 24. And again, I just press the up arrow key when I'm done there. We need to put the curve into 28, so we're going to highlight 28, over here to the radius for that, and look up on our table again. And for lot 3, we have a length of 69, 41, radius is 671.2 against clockwise, so 671.2, and that takes care of it. We can check the other curve information there and make sure we're the delta that we're supposed to be. I'm just going to check that here real quick. Okay, and I do notice that my delta is off a little bit. I've got a 555.32 over in the table. I've got a 513.30. So I'm going to put a highlighter through that curve for now on the Plat, and come back and check that a little later on and see what's actually happening there. Now let's go ahead and come back to our traverses here. I'm going to select all 5 of these lots, right click and go to Traverse Settings. And when that comes up, I want to tell Traverse PC that I want to draw all the lot labels for those lots. and that's the information I want. Make them a little smaller so they'll fit a little bit better. Let's go ahead and choose OK and come back and take a look. We've got all the lot labels in there. Now let's just clean up a few points here that aren't quite where we want, and I'm going to open up two dialogues here. One is the intersection, and the other one is the offset to alignment. And let's get at that right here on this point. This would be the good one to start with. COGO offset to alignment. Okay, so obviously if I choose my boundary traverse, I'm 11.48 feet off on that point 14, and I knew that. Okay, that's on a tangent, so let's come over here and zoom in just a little bit, and let's put that one on where it belongs. That'll make all those lots look like they're supposed to. Okay, so point 14 just needs to be sucked back in on this line here. Couple of ways we can do this. I'm going to say let's go over here in our intersection, and let's choose point 14, and the bearing is the same as 14 to 15. I'm going to use an equation for that. That's going to establish the horizontal line. My vertical line is the same boundary line that I had, 4 on down here. And so I'm going to update the position of 14. Okay, so I just sucked point 14 back onto my west boundary line. Pretty simple way to do that. Let's do the same with point 9. So let's come over here, pick point 9. Well, do you want to see how far off it is first? So I can come into my offset to alignment, pick point 9, and see how close it is. So remember, we had entered that. Let's pick it again here. There we go. We had entered that just with a call from point 8 on the center line, and I'm off by 100th here. So we can easily fix that up in our intersection. We already picked point 9. The bearing here is 9.8. So I'm retaining the original bearing. I'm just going to end up with a different distance here because of the way I'm intersecting. So let's recompute 9. Okay, updates automatically, and now our offset distance is 0. Pretty easy way to just get some points well behaved here inside the drawing. Let's go ahead and scroll up here. I could check 34 again against the boundary. However, I created it with an intersection. Show it still should be just fine, but get a little peace of mind here just by selecting it. Let's come up here and do the same with 28. Again, 28 was created. I can't remember if we did an intersect offset from that line, so it should be fine as well. Are there any over here on the right hand side we wanted to do that with? Let's check 29. Because the alignment is the boundary, I can just work my way all around, picking any of these points to just double check to make sure that they're on that boundary line where I expect them to be. 31 we created on the line. Now remember we said 18 and 21 we were going to come back to at some point and make sure that they were good. Let's first just check them here. So I'm going to check point 18, and it actually tells me it's on the boundary, so I don't need to do anything with it. Let's check point 21, and again it's on the boundary also. What that tells me is that this curve from 12 to 13 intersected the east property line perpendicular, and so those offsets were right on the line where they're supposed to be. And I think I've worked my way all around, so there are no additional points to check. I can close out my dialog boxes. I can come back and look at the whole thing that I put together here. And remember, we ran a highlighter through this curve up here because we had a delta that was off a little bit. And you can run a highlighter through this curve down here, 22, 23, because that delta was off just a little bit. But basically, we've got everything in. The last thing I might want to do, if I want, is come into this centerline traverse. Again, I can do anything that's drawn by that. And I'm just going to tell it to turn off side shots. That'll let each of those lot traverses draw those symbols and lines for us, instead of the side shots having a first shot at it. Let's wait for those to come up here. I'm just going to go into side shots, but I don't want to see any of the lines, none of the points, and no symbols. That basically turns them off, and now when I come back and redraw, the lots will have a chance to redraw those for me.